Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first ever edition of our Research Huddle revamped. So this is revamped because we've made it into a weekly seminar series. So whether or not people will come, apart from the BSP Research Academy, we will be holding these seminar where we feature the research studies of the researchers from the BSP Research Academy, but we are also open to feature the research from the rest of our researchers and colleagues from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So without further ado, let me give just a short introduction about our speaker for this afternoon. Juan Rufino M. Reyes, or JM as we fondly call him, is a researcher at the Research Academy in the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. He is actually an incoming PhD in economics student at King's College London under the prestigious King's Business School Economic Statistics Center of Excellence Scholarship. So he will be proceeding to UK actually on Monday. So this is his some sort of his farewell seminar presentation. And but of course, we are sad to see him go, but we are happy for him nevertheless. As he pursues his PhD economics, so we look forward to his return, of course, and to more research papers coming from JM. JM obtained his bachelor's degree in business economics from the University of Santo Tomas, or UST. In addition, he gained his Master of Arts in Development Policy at De La Salle University and Master of Public Policy degree at the University of Tokyo under the Joint Japan-World Bank Graduate Scholarship Program. So the title of JM's presentation today is Forecasting Regional Economic Activity Using Mixed Frequency Data and Tree-Based Ensemble Methods. Of course, JM will be in a better position to introduce his topic for this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome JM.
Thank you, Ma'am Laura. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sir Bruce, for attending this research huddle. So, for today, I'll discuss my ongoing research titled Forecasting Regional Economic Activity Using Mixed Frequency Data and Key Ensemble Methods. So, again, before I proceed, this is a okay. So before I proceed, all right.
Good afternoon, Governor Eli Remolona. Thank you so much, sir, for, yes, please. We actually just began shortly, but JM is just about to start. So thank you, Governor, and welcome. JM was about to begin before you entered. Thank you.
So again, so good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Governor, for attending. So for today, I'll discuss my research, ongoing research regarding forecasting regional economic activity using mixed frequency data and based on tree-based ensemble methods. So again, before I proceed, let me restate that this is an ongoing study, so therefore the data and methodology is currently being finalized. So that being said, I do my best to incorporate the comments and suggestions. Basically, our colleagues from the Department of Economic Research are here, so please, if there are any comments, so I highly appreciate that. So, okay. Next slide, please. All right, so Also would like to thank to Dr. Bayangos and Dr. Bobby Mariano for their initial comments for this study. Um, so, to start, so as we all know, economic forecasting is an essential approach for policy formulation. In the BSP, different macroeconomic forecasting models are used to formulate timely monetary policy responses. Basically, conducting economic forecasting provides insight into the future condition of the economy and help policymakers make informed decisions. So accordingly, most macroeconomic models used in forecasting often focus on national level aggregates such as GDP. However, this typically overlooks um, the unique regional dynamics and variations of economic activity. The emergence of recent shocks also, such as the 2008 global financial crisis and COVID-19 pandemic, changed the landscape in conducting economic forecasting due to the fast-paced impact of these externalities on the overall structure of economic activity. Most economists now aim to immediately observe and address its effects by comprehensively evaluating the overall soundness of the economy. And most economists nowadays maximize the use of high-frequency data using different advanced econometric and machine learning methodologies. In recent literature, these concepts emerge as complementary tools for macroeconomic forecasting. In the Philippine context, these concepts were recently utilized by several studies to forecast or nowcast national level GDP, inflation, and domestic liquidity. However, developing a model to estimate regional economic activity is challenging to execute and much less straightforward due to data unavailability, and timeliness of subnational indicators. So most regional data in the Philippines are only available annually. So as we can see here, most regional data available in the Philippines, their frequency is annual. And some of these data actually have similar publication dates with gross regional domestic product. In addition, there's only a limited number of regional economic indicators to utilize in order to estimate regional economic activity in the country. Most of these have different frequencies in relation to the gross regional domestic product. So as you can see here, domestic trade is on a quarterly basis. National tax allocation is posted on a monthly basis. Deposit liabilities is monthly, and CPI is published monthly. Therefore, to maximize these regional data and to have a comprehensive macroeconomic model to estimate regional economic activity, a RAG-edge problem should be addressed. So let me discuss first what is a RAG-edge data problem. So this particular concern arises when your chosen variables in the model have different publication periods. For example, in the study, I want to forecast regional economic activity using GRDP. And I'm trying to incorporate explanatory variables with higher frequency in relation to GRDP, such as domestic trade, CPI, which are published quarterly and monthly, respectively. This particular concern is not new actually in macroeconomic forecasting. Among the most common approaches to solve this problem is to aggregate the higher frequency data into low frequency, so otherwise known as typical aggregation. The other method is to interpolate lower frequency data to high frequency data. However, these techniques have their own unique disadvantages. For aggregation, it assumes that the higher frequency has the same effects to the dependent variable across time. As discussed by Dr. Manuel Alves of UP School of Statistics in his presentation titled Constructing Leading Economic Indicators for the Philippine Economy Using Dynamic Factor Models, this approach could lead to aggregation bias. On the other hand, even though interpolation is a more popular and robust approach to address RAG-edge data problems, it assumes that data points follow a certain pattern. So let's jump into dynamic factor model, or DFM, which was recently utilized by Soybil-Jen and Yazgan in 2021 to address RAG-edge problem. Particularly, these authors use factors or loadings extracted from this particular methodology to feed them into machine learning models rather than using the data directly. So what is DFM? I will not discuss the deep mathematical and technical aspects of the model, but the basic idea of DFM is that it converts your large data set into common underlying factor or factors to capture the shared pattern of variability and relationship among multiple variables. So basically, DFM is a dimensionality reduction model. So those familiar with PCA, principal components analysis, the DFM is quite similar. The main difference is DFM considers temporal dependencies, while PCA treats all data independently. So that's the main difference between the two. So another strong point of DFM is solving RAG-edge data due to its innate ability to integrate a more robust method in addressing asynchronous data publication, which is the Kalman filter and smoothing approach. The study of Soybil-Jen and Yazgan in 2021 found that using factors in DFM instead of feeding the data directly into the model, the machine learning models, addresses asynchronous data publication and relatively provides better estimates than machine learning models that directly use raw data. All right, so the main question is, why do we need to conduct this study, provided that most economic analysis tends to focus more on the national level rather than the subnational level? Will this study still be relevant? So if you ask me, of course, because I'm the author of the paper, but let's see it more objectively. So as mentioned earlier, most forecasting and nowcasting models often focus on national level aggregates. This, however, overlooks the unique dynamics and variation of economic activity from a subnational perspective. The one paper that focused on the subnational inflation was actually by our colleagues at the Department of Economic Research, wherein they nowcast regional inflation. So that's one of my one of the reasons why I also want to conduct this regional economic activity forecasting. So another thing is that this study could strengthen the regional economic planning in the Philippines. The third, publication delay, pose serious problems for policymakers who need to monitor the economy in real time. Some studies actually ignored RAG-edge data problem and settled for aggregation and interpolation. The one that I can remember that addresses this concern using Kalman filter is also from the study from our colleagues in the Department of Economic Research, particularly the study of Ms. Joan Alyon, Sir Dennis Bautista, and Ms. Jed Dasho, titled Nowcasting Inflation, a State Space Approach Using High Frequency Data. So, fourth, this study could also serve as a supplementary tool for economic managers to make informed decisions about regional economic development. Lastly, this study also contributes to the growing body of literature regarding the application of machine learning methods and usefulness of mixed frequency data in economic forecasting. So here are some of my objectives. So first is to extend the work of Dr. Bobby Mariano and Dr. Osmocor, wherein they now has the national level GDP. Given the results of their study, in which they have concluded that mixed data sampling regression or MIDAS is the best model to nowcast national level GDP. This study will use MIDAS regression as one of the benchmark models. Another objective, as discussed earlier, is to adopt the methodology of Soybelgen and Yazgan in 2021. These authors use dynamic factors as input variables rather than feeding the data directly to the machine learning models. And based on their findings, conducting this approach outperforms machine learning models that directly use the data and linear DFMs. Lastly, is to utilize tree-based ensemble methods used in machine learning to estimate GRDP in selected regions in the Philippines. So at present, there is an increasing number of studies that concluded that machine learning algorithms such as shrinkage methods, neural networks, tree-based ensemble methods outperform conventional econometric technique used in forecasting or nowcasting. So here is the research question of this study. So in general, this study aims to answer if tree-based ensemble methods outperform the conventional macroeconomic forecasting models, such as the naive forecasting models such as AR1, and the one that Dr. Bobby Mariano and Dr. Suleiman Osmocor found that MIDAS regression is the best model to estimate national level GDP. So this study also aims to answer if the methodology of Soybelgen and Yazgan will improve the overall process of forecasting this particular regional economic indicator. Now, you will ask me, why machine learning? Why attempt to conduct a forecasting approach based on a black box method, when instead I can actually use traditional multivariate econometric models such as VAR and MIDAS, or basically DFM. So aside from those that I've mentioned earlier, my main answer to this is because machine learning algorithms can provide us with robust and parsimonious models. Recent studies concluded that machine learning addresses some issues or issues and concerns in econometric modeling. Among these are the curse of dimensionality and overfitting. So imagine if I use a typical VAR model to with, let's say, 50 variables to forecast GRDP, and the optimal lag to consider is 3. So of course, variable selection should be based on economic theory. However, if there are 50 potential variables that can forecast GRDP under VAR model, so we have more or less 7,500 coefficients plus variances. However, not all these variables are significant to interpret GRDP. There are actually different ways why machine learning models address this issue. First, it can use dimensionality reduction, such as DFM or, let's say, PCA. Regularization methods can also be used, such as lasso and ridge regression. And lastly, the ensemble methods. So this is the main reason why I focus on forecasting regional economic activity using tree-based ensemble methods. Another reason is that tree-based ensemble methods, compared to other machine learning techniques such as ridge and lasso, can incorporate nonlinear relationships. To give an overview, tree-based methods involve combining the predictions of multiple regression trees to create a stronger and more robust estimation. So, third reason is that there is a relatively new approach in conducting macroeconomic forecasting using Ensemble method. This is basically the Bayesian additive regression trees, or BART. This particular approach in machine learning takes the Bayesian perspective, wherein it incorporates prior about the data and updates those prior as data is observed. Actually, I'm still in the process of studying this particular ensemble method because some of the published studies that use BART is just published last year. So one is from the ECB, wherein they use BART to estimate US GDP growth. And actually the result of the conclusion of that study is BART gives more robust estimates than other machine learning algorithms. So let's go to the data and methodology of the paper. So moving, based on the objective of the study, the target variable or the dependent variable that I'm planning to use is the annual real GDP of selected regions in the Philippines. For the explanatory variables, I intend to incorporate numerous economic, demographic, and socioeconomic regional indicators with low and high frequency. I also include a dummy variable, a shock variable, which is expressed as a binary form. Actually, I borrowed this concept from the paper of Gabriel et al. From our colleagues in the Department of Economic Research. Basically, the value 1 represents that a particular region experienced a demand or supply shock, which caused expansion or contraction of region economic growth in a month. On the other hand, a value of 0 represents an absence of shock. So just to give a quick overview of the methodology, the benchmark models will be AR1, and Midas regression. Then the tree-based algorithms will incorporate the dynamic factors obtained from DFM to solve the RAG edge problem. Afterwards, I will evaluate the performance accuracy based on their pseudo outsample forecast. So this will be based on rolling window approach. The performance of each out of sample will be measured by their by each model's RMSE and MAE. And lastly, to compare the forecast errors of benchmarks and machine learning models, I plan to use the Bold-Mariano test in the study. Then, if necessary, I will do forecast averaging. So basically, what's next? Right now, I'm currently doing a preliminary runs for machine learning models. Based on the initial comments of Dr. Mariano, I'm also currently gathering other regional data, if available, such as energy consumption or weather conditions. He also raised if I could incorporate Google Trends in this study. Another thing is that I will try to expand the nature of the study. Instead of conducting forecast of GRDP, I will conduct the forecast of the components of GRDP, which is basically by industry or based on the Philippine Standard Industrial Classification. Lastly, if time permits, I will also try to include other machine learning approach, such as neural networks, basically long short-term memory. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. You may email me if you have questions, but it's welcome here. But I don't know if can have access to my email, BSP email, once I start my PhD on next week. So thank you very much, Pa.
Thank you very much, JM. I hope it's okay if you can stay. We're opening the floor for open forum, question and answers, please. I see a raised hand first.
Yeah, thank you, JR, for your presentation. Going back to your main research question, I'm just curious, what is your hypothesis or initial guess?
My initial guess is machine learning will provide good estimates. Because basically, sir, I've already conducted a study regarding machine learning at forecasting domestic liquidity, and based on those conclusion, I guess machine learning will give you a more robust estimates. But the main addition to this study is that instead of using the data directly into the model, I will try to because the data is not yet finalized here. I can add more depending on the availability of regional data. And if there are more regional data available, I guess it's more advantageous to use TFM and use those dynamic factor models and input or feed these dynamic factors into the model.
What is your timetable? Para babalikan ka namin.
Depende, sir. Kasi yeah, I guess yun nga, I will do my PhD on starting Monday. So, but I will try to finish this at the end of the year for yes, sir, to submit it for our discussion paper in draft. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
JM, I think this is very interesting and I think, very promising.
Thank you, sir.
Your emphasis is to go to regional GDP, which is annual.
Yes, sir.
Going from higher frequency data, which is national, right? More aggregate data.
Yes, sir.
More or less, right? Can you think about going in the opposite direction, going from regional data that is annual, but somehow going to aggregate national GDP data, which is quarterly? Pwede ba yun? Does that ever work? And secondly, for the BSP, we make policy decisions 8 times a year.
Yes, sir.
That's not quarterly. That's more frequent than quarterly. But it's not monthly either. It's lower frequency than the data. But it's not. The meetings are not evenly distributed between weeks. Some meetings are 8 weeks. Some meetings are 10 weeks between them. Presumably, you can use this in general mixed frequency methods and machine learning methods to somehow make the analysis of the monthly, or not the monthly, but when we do monetary policy decisions, somehow make them on equal footing in terms of the data. What I have in mind is, if you're estimating a Taylor rule, somehow the data have to be equivalent in terms of frequency for making those decisions. Is there a way to do that? Can you? Can you estimate a Taylor rule for the Philippines, for the BSP, that takes account of the fact that the meetings are irregular?
Right, though, Governor, I not yet read some literature that incorporate um, the policy decisions that are irregular every month. But I think more recent studies that use machine learning use or incorporate the decisions of the monetary policy decision every month and then use them as a explanatory variable for the model. But I think um, having more timely estimates, somehow like GRDP, which is on annual basis, and then have it similar with the policy decisions. I'll look into that if that's possible. But then again, sir, I think more on the policy decisions and then using that particularly text analysis and then using that text analysis as the explanatory variable to estimate a particular macroeconomic indicator. Yes, ma'am.
Siguro just to follow up yung kay question ni Governor, can you actually do a MIDAS estimation with machine learning methods? Kasi yung napafollow ko si Governor, kasi if you do that, you can answer deeper questions, deeper policy questions. But can you do that? Because if you can do that, baka yung question ni Governor ma-answer.
Okay.
Because you will now have policy variables tucked into your model.
I'll try to look into that, ma'am, if I can incorporate a particular methodology using machine learning combined using MIDAS. I'll try to look into that if that's possible. But based on what the literature now, I think they're just combining a particular way in machine learning and use that particular result and input that in a traditional econometric model.
So it's not the other way.
Yes, ma'am. Just similar to what I've said to the governor, some studies use the policy decisions and use machine learning techniques such as text analysis and use that basically text analysis as a variable to estimate. One that I've read is about inflation. So that's it. Yes, sir.
Hindi, interesado kasi ako dito because this is an important policy question. When you're doing a monetary policy decision, you want the latest available data, right? But sometimes the timing of the meeting is early in the month, so some of the data that arrives later in the month, inflation tends to be later in the month, hindi mo magagamit yon. You will end up ignoring those numbers. Sometimes the meeting is late in the month, so you get more data. But when you're trying to see whether you're by the way, in the literature, you can do this with Markov decision methods. So each decision is based on all available information at the time. But to see whether you're doing it consistently, you want to see whether those decisions are consistent with some Taylor rule. But to estimate the Taylor rule based on data that sometimes it's early in the month, sometimes it's late in the month, and sometimes there's more data and sometimes there's less data. Kaya bang gawin yun? Can you think about that? At least when you're doing your dissertation, this is something you can think about.
I'll try to incorporate that aspect into the model cover, but
Three essays naman yun eh.
yes, sir. But basically, ayun, sir. Actually, the topic here is quite similar to what I will do in London for starting next week. So then, sir. So I'll try to incorporate that specific comment here in the study as well as to my dissertation, sir. Thank you very much for the comment.
Thank you.
Yes, po, sir.
I do agree with the governor. It's very promising. In our country, as you know, we have a national structure of development planning. And you sometimes wonder, what do they use for their development planning, regional development planning activities? And as you point out, what kind of data do they use? So this is very promising for that purpose, and not only for us here at BSP, because we do produce a regional development report, and I'm still wondering what that is for. And our colleagues at NEDA, who really need this, and for our future work in the BSP as we increase and intensify our engagement on economic matters at the regional level. What kind of input do we put into the regional development planning process? And looking forward to when you're done with this.
Thank you, sir. Actually, one of the factors po, kasi before I came to BRAC, I was in the Department of Economic Statistics. And then what I have noticed when in PSA is that most regional statistics are not similar to one another. So they have a report wherein they have published RG about that particular region in specific year, and then one region, the discussion about the regional economic development is 5 years lag. So that's one of the main reasons why I want to conduct the study. Thank you, sir, for the comments, and I appreciate thank you, sir.
Just a quick clarification. From my the way I understand it is that you're using 2 stages. So in the first stage, are you estimating a DFM or a MIDAS? And then in the second stage, that's where you incorporate machine learning methods, right?
Yes, sir. For the first po, yes, I'll do DFM because I want to extract the dynamic factors, the factor loadings into the DFM and feed them into the machine learning. And then I will use MIDAS as a benchmark model because, of course, we cannot say that one model is best with one another, like if we don't perform both models. Like if we, some literature says that, okay, machine learning is good, providing good estimates, but they do not have benchmark models. So that's the problem in most machine learning literature. So yes, sir, there will be 2 process, extracting the dynamic factor and feeding it into the tree-based machine learning models.
I think Oni also was suggesting to use first MIDAS and then from the MIDAS you incorporate machine learning methods. In that way, you can see now the gain from using machine learning methods after estimating MIDAS.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. That's the one that Ms. Oni mentioned, kasi sir, is yeah, if I can integrate machine learning into MIDAS, or combine, but again, sir, the one that I can think of now immediately is just to do like a PCA, and the result of the PCA, I will incorporate that into the MIDAS. So, yun po. Thank you po, Sir Vic.
So any additional questions from our colleagues from the DER, perhaps? Sorry, Chris, pressure ba? No, kasi DER would have your own ano din, di ba?
Not really a question, but probably a suggestion, JR. Perhaps since the aggregated GDP is released quarterly. You can use aggregated GDP as a benchmark and just use the more or less the weights of the different regions to GDP are quite steady. So as a benchmark instead of an AR or a MIDAS, you can probably just use the actual GDP, then get the regional weights, apply it, then use that as a benchmark to compare with the performance of the machine learning model.
Thank you, Chris.
And also just to add to that, I think Chris, and also in relation to MBM Bruce's question earlier, I think that's even their basis. The weights that they use, the regional weights, is what they use for the regional development plan and other regional development reports that come out more frequently than the annual. I think I remember reading through and realizing that they are using the weights. So there's also some disadvantage to that because it's a constant rate. So it's not necessarily, you don't really expect shares or share to total GDP to be the same across different time periods. But just an aside. Any additional comments? We still have a few minutes left. Yes, I mean, Bruce.
This is not about the paper, but this is about this huddle. It's really crucial, and thank you, Brock, for doing this, because we need to do this regularly as part of building a research culture. And the governor has approved this and in fact has pushed it, and we do need to start and begin on time and end on time so that it is wise use of our time. If you're late, that's your problem. If you're not able to put in your question before the time ends, that's your problem too. If you're not able to present your paper or research question within the hour and allow time for question, then that's a major test for your research capability. Over time, we need to open this up to other agencies and other research institutions, and so that BSP capacity to foster and spark research grows over time. And if we know that this happens every week, week in, week out, we just show up here and learn from the process and essentially spark each other's ideas as we move forward in our research and in our analysis. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much, MBM Bruce, for those words. And to borrow from AG Laura, so this revamped Research Huddle series is actually aimed to be bigger, better, and bolder. So, so that's our mantra for research. And then, so thank you very much, MBM Bruce. Thank you, Governor, for being here with us and for supporting this research endeavor of the BSP Research Academy. And also, this is, again, like as MBM Bruce mentioned, this is really to foster the research culture in the entire BSP and including other agencies and I think the entire research community in the Philippines for that matter. So thank you, JM, and congratulations. Bon voyage on Monday, or I think this weekend. Thank you, everyone. So see you again next week, next Wednesday. Thank you and good afternoon.